Hi, guys, and welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Michal. Michal is the author of Becoming Soulful, 6 Keys for Profound Transformation in Your Therapy, Coaching, or Healing Practice, scheduled for release in the summer of 2024. She is a certified professional life coach, Reiki master, spiritual mentor, medical intuitive, and social worker, passionate about elevating consciousness in the world, one soul at a time. Welcome, Michal.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm glad to be here. I love your podcast, so it's an honor.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I'm so glad you're here because I just thought the work that you do I thought would be very helpful for my audience. Much of my audience is has been in an abusive relationship, as is no longer, most likely the majority of them are no longer, and even if they were in an abusive relationship long ago, we know that habits, right, the habits that we formed over our life can affect us for the rest of our life, the things that have happened to us. So I'm glad you're here to talk about how we can heal, and no matter what age we're at and no matter how long ago it has been. So
Exactly.
tell me how you got into doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so I was a social worker. I got a degree in social work. That was many years ago, actually. I think more than 30 years ago, probably. And and what happened was that in my personal life, I experienced some trauma, and I got depressed, and I started therapy. And my therapist was not trauma informed. It was the first therapist
Yeah.
I ever worked with, was not trauma informed. And I didn't know back then what
Yeah.
I know, of course, today, because again, I was already a social worker, but I wasn't aware, like I am aware today, that trauma is stored in the body and talk therapy is not enough, and
Yeah.
you need to do some soul work and body work. So the experience of working with this specific therapist was not a good one. But you know what? She was one of my greatest teachers, because I already felt a little limited with my social worker skills. And
Okay.
then I had this experience with the therapy. So I decided to go on a quest and just find other ways to heal myself,
Yes.
to complement the talk therapy. So I became a Reiki master, and I studied many different healing modalities, holistic healing modalities. And then becoming a life coach was just a natural thing, because
Yeah.
I think today I combine all my skills that I
Yeah.
acquired throughout the years
Yeah.
with a traditional talk therapy, but it's much more expanded.
Yes. That's amazing that you did all that. And it's true. I know that so many people I've talked to today or even on the show that they have had an experience and now they're helping others, because we don't want anyone to go through what we went through, right? When we learn and we want to help others. And that's definitely what's been happening to me. And so that's interesting. How can people decide what they might need other than talk therapy? Like, how do
Oh,
you even?
it's a perfect question to ask
Okay,
me. I'm
great.
excited about the question. I'll tell
Okay,
you
good.
why. Because what many people don't realize, including professionals,
Yeah.
don't realize, is that the best guidance that we can receive is actually from our soul, from within
Okay.
ourselves. And when I say soul, I really mean this pure essence of ourselves,
Yeah.
the pure essence of who we are. And I believe that lacking a connection with the soul is at the core of many conditions. And once we connect with the
Okay.
soul, and we connect with our internal guidance system, then we receive guidance from within, or
Mm-hmm.
on like what's the best path for us to heal.
Yeah.
So then if you go to a traditional, a classical, let's say, therapist who is not knowledgeable about other ways to like to expand the work, and
Right.
it's just talk therapy, then they would use what they learned in school, and will help you like
Mm-hmm.
unpack the trauma and revisit it and see what happened. And that was me in the beginning, when
Yeah.
I was a social worker. But today, fast forward, one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Becoming Soulful, because I believe that both for the for the client and the professional and the therapist, once we become soulful and we receive the guidance from within ourselves, then the healing is so deep and sustainable. Does
Yeah.
it make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It does make sense. But how do you think that people can choose what they really would? I don't know. Should they just try different things? I know for me, because I've tried different things. I've done tapping, I've done hypnosis, therapy, different things, and I know that they've all helped a certain part of my body and a certain part of my healing. And I don't know. So speak more on
Right.
that.
Yeah. So I want to give you an example, if it's okay. Just a
Uh huh.
conversation that I had the other day with the client, that she's a client of mine for a long time. I don't know, maybe 2 years or even more. And when she reached out to me, it's interesting. You know how sometimes people reach out with like a problem they have in mind, but we don't even realize, or they don't even realize, that there's so much underneath. So
Yes.
she reached out to me because she felt stuck with a house. She wanted to sell the house, and the house was in chaos, and she was like, I'm stuck with the house, I can't sell it. So
Right.
apparently on the surface, just a problem of selling the house. Now, after I think a few months of working with her, almost a year, I think, um, one time I took her through a journey inside. I call it
Hmm.
the journey into the soul. And this is a process of like a deep guided visualization that I take people through
Okay.
to
Yeah.
connect with her soul and receive messages from within. And because she felt stuck with the house, I made her, in the guided visualization, stand at the door of her house
Wow.
and really listening and connecting to her soul and asking her soul, why is it so hard for me to sell this house and to get, and to move forward with my life?
Yeah.
And the information that came within was truly amazing, because it was the first time that she connected what happened in her childhood and then in her marriage. She was abused. She had an
Wow.
alcoholic dad in her childhood, and then she was married to an alcoholic who abused her as well.
Yeah.
And I knew all that. What I didn't know is that in her childhood, she had this habit of like getting to the house and standing at the door and listening really well to
Mm.
see if she hears her dad's voices inside,
Yeah.
to know if it's safe or not. And when she heard the noises and knew that it's not safe, she would go hide on a tree. She had like a tree house,
Wow.
and the house didn't feel safe for her. So this process of connecting with her soul really brought up the clarity that to this day, when she stands at the door at her house, even though she's 60 years old,
Right.
she doesn't feel safe at her
Wow.
own house. And it was the dialogue she made with her soul that brought this clarity. And when we were done with this process of healing and connection with the soul, she opened her eyes and she said, I am safe now. I no
Yes.
longer have to go and hide,
Yes.
on the trees. And she made the connection really through the clarity she got from her soul, that the unsafety was really related to her past. And after this session, she started to develop a really, really good relationship with her house, and just feeling very safe, and fell in love again with her house and didn't want to sell it anymore. So I'm giving it
Yes.
as an example
I
just
love
because
that.
recently I had a conversation with her about the whole process, and actually they're part of her story that are in my book also. She gave me permission, because this is an example for something that we couldn't make it up, or we couldn't plan it, or no therapist could really lead her to see this connection, or not to see, to feel.
Yeah.
It was what she felt when I took her through the guided visualization, and she really felt it in her body, that brought her
Yes.
clarity. So if I go
Yes.
back to your question,
Yeah.
what do we do? So there are some practices of connecting with the soul
Yeah.
that I love taking people through, and then in my book I'm very practical. So I give really practical practices. For example, just something so simple as sitting quietly with yourself and placing your hands on your heart. And then I have a little like a few sentences of like what you say to your soul, like I honor you, I respect
Yes.
you, I
Yeah.
thank you for being here, I'm looking forward to receive clarity from you, and this intentional connection with the soul. And then you ask question and you listen, and then you do what I like to call a soul journaling,
Mm.
when you just write down, like, let's say if the question is, what wisdom do you have for me now? That's
Yeah.
what you're asking your soul.
Yeah.
But you're in a state where you're open and connected with your soul because you already did a little ritual to connect with your soul. Or maybe your question is um, something like, what am I meant to learn here? What's the
Yeah.
lesson? Because our soul really wants us to learn and expand. So those practices of really connecting within, asking a question, dialoguing,
Hmm.
that brings some clarity. Of course, I cannot explain the whole process like
Right.
in a few minutes, but I'm just not,
Right.
like giving you an example.
Yeah.
But I think it's also different for different people, because
Yeah.
whatever fills up your soul
Yeah.
may be different than what fills up my soul.
Oh, right.
But once you know that what fills up your soul, then you can really create this connection with your soul.
Hmm. I really, when I was doing hypnotherapy, I really enjoyed like going like that, where it was almost like a little journey, right? In my mind, and it was guided, and it was so interesting to me because the things that come up, they're very natural, right? They, you know, there's simple questions that are asked, and then it's like these things come out, and it's almost like you knew that already. They've already been they were already there, but it's a matter of, for me it was like a matter of looking at it and saying, okay, it doesn't serve me anymore. I don't need it in my life anymore. And then to find the connection for today with what was happening in my past. It was so freeing because then I could see
Mhm.
the patterns of some of the things that were happening currently in my life. And
Right.
that is that what you're finding, that we really have that pattern from so long ago, or we have like that, with the
Yeah,
house.
so many patterns and so many different beliefs. One of the maybe patterns that I see with women that were in abusive relationship,
Uh-huh.
especially with narcissists, I see this pattern that if they're doing spiritual work or inner work,
Yeah.
they become this kind person. They really want to be kind person and compassionate person,
Yeah.
and they confuse
Yes.
being kind and compassionate person with putting up with abuse, because
Yes.
the inner dialogue is something, the inner monologue actually within themselves is something like, if I'm a kind person,
Yeah.
I should be kinder to him.
Oh my gosh. Are you reading my mind? It's so
But
true though. It's so true.
that's what I hear from many women. And,
Yes.
part of the reason why in my book I present 6 keys for profound transformation. One of them is spirituality. There is the key of insight, the key of authenticity. But one of the reasons why I encourage people to find their way to connect with spirituality, and it doesn't have to be a religious spirituality, it can
Right.
be a non religious, but one of the reasons is that when I ask a woman who was or is in an abusive relationship on a spiritual level,
Yeah.
what's her lesson? And she says, let's say she says, to be a kind person. And I say, but your soul guided you to this life where you
Yeah.
face this situation when a person is abusive for you.
Yeah.
So let's look at the spiritual opportunity and what is your lesson. And many times what she realizes is that her lesson is actually to discern being a kind person with putting up with abuse, and to feel worthy enough,
Yeah.
within herself, to set a boundary and to
Yeah.
not allow the abuse without thinking that makes me an unkind person.
Yeah.
There needs to be a spiritual lesson, a spiritual learning here that really helps her
Yeah.
to have the courage to take a big step and not to put up with the abuse. It's not going to happen just because you know that
Right.
that's what you're supposed to do. There needs to be a deeper reason, and that's the reason that will come from your soul and will have
Yeah.
a spiritual uh, connection, really.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I speak to women on as well. I mean, you were speaking my language, that's for sure. It's that we're not doormats, right? We don't need to, but I spent so many years doing that. I'm just going to be nice and I'm a nice person, so this shouldn't be
Mhm.
happening, but we don't realize that these things happen because not everyone is nice or not everyone is kind, and abusers are going to abuse because that's what they do no matter what we do on our side. We can't be codependent that way, but the biggest thing for me was learning how to love myself and that I had value. And that was the biggest thing. Wasn't just that
Right,
I'm a good person or a kind person, but I have
right,
I have value, and I don't have to withstand the abuse. I don't have to
right.
do that.
And until you feel that you're worthy and until you
Yes.
really learn to love yourself, that's why many women attract to themselves a relationship
Yes.
after relationship with abuse. Like they had abuse in their childhood, then they're
Yes.
marrying, an abusive person until they learn, or we learn really the lesson of feeling worthy enough,
Yeah.
that that setting the boundary is coming deep from within, and that's why the connection with the soul
Yeah.
is brings up the wisdom that helps us to navigate this situation that we're the circumstance, the situation we're in.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
I had another client of mine this week. Funny, she's like 65, I think, and she just started a few years ago a dancing career. When
love it.
she's dancing, the interesting thing is that many years ago, she was my client many years ago. I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, and she came to me because she tried to make a decision if to leave her marriage, to get a divorce. And one of the things that came up for her when she was trying to decide if to get a divorce was how small she felt,
Wow.
that she
Yeah.
felt very small.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward, I mean, she got a divorce, and now fast forward, we just had this conversation this week, how she would never imagine that she will be a dancer on the stage, a competitive dancer on the stage at her age, like
Yeah.
over 60.
Right.
And I reminded her, do you remember many years ago when you felt so small, and now
Right.
you're taking the space on the stage and then you're
Yeah.
dancing your way through life? So yeah, miracles can happen when you connect with the soul and you receive the right guidance to you
Right.
that
Right.
can helps you navigate in life, like healing trauma, especially from an abuse.
Yes. Well, and you just say that so well because I've talked about that. I haven't been able to say it exactly how I want to say it, but it's always like, when are you living the life you want to be living? Because I always say I don't promote divorce, but I don't promote people staying in abuse. But I say, are you living the life you want to be living? Because if you're not, and that's what it was me, of course narcissists will drive you so insane that you go to therapy. And
Right.
it was in therapy that I woke up and started to realize I have value, I have worth, and that he was unwilling to participate in our life where I wasn't being abused, and it was only about him, right? And so I often say that is this the life you want to be living? If not, there's something else that you should be doing to live
Yeah,
the life you
I
want.
totally agree with that. But I wouldn't say that all the women that came to work with me because of unhappy relationship, they ended up getting a divorce. I
Right.
remember many stories of women that actually stayed in the relationship,
Uh-huh.
but they went through a transformation
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
And then when the other side agreed to also
Yes.
do their own transformation and work together, it worked. Of course, there are many situations when a woman ended up getting a divorce, but I don't think
Yes.
like that's always the solution.
Right.
But if we get a divorce and we don't do the inner work, then we just bring the same patterns into the next
Yes.
relationship. So it's really, really important to do the deep healing.
Yes. Well, we're running out of time, and so I just wanted to ask what's before I, sign us off and everything, but what's one more thing that you would like, if there's anything else that you would like the audience to know before we say goodbye today?
Maybe just to really, because we're talking to women that have experienced abuse and they
Yeah.
really want to heal. So to know and to remember that the trauma is stored in the body,
Yeah.
and to find ways, find professionals, find ways to complement the talk therapy with expanded is expanded techniques such
Okay.
as body work, soul work, as well as expanded spirituality.
Okay, that's wonderful. And where can everyone get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so my website is beaconsofchange.com, beacons
Okay.
with S of
Okay.
change.com. And if you're listening to this interview, to this podcast before August 6th, 2024, then my website will be the best place. And if it's after August 6th, 2024, my book should be already in Amazon, and it's
Okay.
Becoming Soulful, Michal Spiegelman.
I'm so excited for you. That's so great. And we'll put all the information in the show notes so everybody can get a hold of you. Thank you so much for being here and for just taking such good care of us. I love your heart and I love what you're doing for women. Thank you so much. My audience is really going to resonate with that.
Thank
Um,
you, Laura.
and thank you everybody for listening today. If you could please go to Apple and Spotify, and of course tell Podcast Land that you love us. And don't ever forget your voice matters. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.